Hi CBK, welcome to Studio Art with Mrs. Neal. You may be watching this in a different order, but for me, this is our very first class. Thank you for joining us today, and I do apologize in advance for my horribly terrible video. I'm learning as I go. All right, well thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be creating several, or you may start with one, of these little butterfly critters. Now you may ask, why a butterfly? How is that related to anything? Let me tell you. Okay, so I'm not the best at origami, and I spent a lot of time looking at different tutorials and practicing. This one is the one I can mess up the least. So going from that, I'm gonna assume that means it's probably one of the less difficult ones, and you may have just as much success as me in creating this. So before we get started with folding our own origami butterflies, I want to just tell you about the two types of creases that you're going to need to know in order to help you succeed at creating this butterfly and really in anything you do in origami. So there's two types of folds you need to know about. One is called the valley fold. Now if I take a piece of paper and I fold it, when I open it up, I have this kind of trench, trough, or valley where it's folded inward. That's a valley fold. On the reverse side of that, if I'm folding my paper and I turn over a valley fold, I can see I've got this piece of paper where it's got this crease that's kind of protruding. It's sticking up like a mountain, right? Mountain fold. All right, so it becomes important in the future when you're folding, whether you're looking at a mountain fold or a valley fold, because it affects whether it does what you need it to, so you can make it look right. Awesome. So mountain fold, popping out, valley fold, creasing inward. You got this, right, CBK? Awesome. All right. So now, to begin, when we are working with origami, it is important that our paper is correctly sized. You need a square piece of paper. It will not work if your paper is a rectangle like this. Not gonna work. You're just gonna get frustrated, end up crumpling it up and throwing it away, like I did many times. All right, so make sure you've got a square piece of paper to start with. For those of us who are participating in the studio art class with our teachers, you probably have the kit your teacher got, and that means you have prepared origami paper, and you get to just select the color, shape, size, whatever shape. I don't know, it's got to be square. You're gonna select the one you want. Some of those papers may have a color on both sides, or if like this one you have a color on only one side. Either way is good. You may even have designs on there. Totally cool. If you want to use white paper, you can. For many years, I just used regular notebook paper and cut squares out of it. Totally works. All right, so in order to create the butterfly we're working on today, we need to make sure that when we get started, we are holding our paper in the correct direction. So you need to make sure that the colored side is up, facing you. Okay, that made sense, right? I got this. Colored side up, facing me. Now, we're gonna first fold our paper in half. Given that it's a square, really does not matter whether you start by folding it vertically or horizontally. So I'm going to fold mine horizontally. I'm going to very carefully line up the edges and the corners, because in origami, precision is very important. If we're not careful to be precise, we won't be happy with our end product. All right, so you can see I've got this crease created here. I folded it in half. It's kind of a funky little rectangle now. After I fold it, I have to make sure that I go over my lines and crease them thoroughly, because this is going to make my paper do what I need it to later. So now I've got this wonky long rectangle. I'm going to fold it again, this time vertically, so that I have a small square again. And again, I'm carefully lining it up as I do it, because I know that if I get this right, everything else will fall into place. So I'm going to crease the paper very carefully. And now I have this little square that you see. I'm going to open up the square piece of paper, and I should see on it 4 quadrants. or 4 smaller squares, like so. Awesome, not too bad, right? Okay, so I had the colored paper up, the colored side of the paper up. Now I'm gonna flip it over so the colored side of the paper is down. And my next task is to fold it diagonally. Now, if you're anything like me, you're like, oh, this is so difficult. It never goes where I want. I just learned this cool trick. So you can see mine is kind of tinting up, and there's this spot in the very middle of the paper where all my lines intersect. If I carefully press gently downward on it, my paper sort of pops up. Now I can take this popped up corner and I can fold it upwards to the other corner. It just makes it a little bit easier to get those diagonal creases when you can get the paper to sort of pop up and help you along. Now, when I'm making the creases in the paper, you may notice that I do it in a weird way, but this way really helps keep the paper tidy and neat. So I hold my corners that I lined up with one finger, and then I'm going to run the other finger down diagonally across until I get to that point that I pushed down on to make the paper pop the way I want it. And then I'm going to crease in one direction first, go back to the middle, and crease in the other direction. When I do it this way, I get straight lines on my paper. My paper doesn't get all wrinkled up. It's a little easier. So just a heads up. All right, now that I've got it folded diagonally, I'm going to unfold it. I'm going to make sure that the colored side stays up. And now I need to fold it diagonally in the other direction. So again, I'm going to put it down on my paper, on my surface, and I'm going to push on that midpoint. Get it to pop up a little bit. And now I will take that mountain crease here, and I'm going to line it up with this mountain crease. So I've got these corners lined up to create a diagonal fold in the opposite direction. Remember that if we start from the middle point and crease towards each edge, it makes it lie flatter. It's just a little bit easier on us. Awesome. Now I've got this unassuming triangle. I'm going to open this back up again. Okay. All right. Well, here comes what I think is the absolute hardest, most difficult part of this project. It's something that all the tutorials call a water bomb base. Okay, so I'm gonna hold the paper so I've got this square, and it really helps if you find valley creases on either side like this, because we need to get it to crease inward, and valleys crease in more easily. So I'm kind of tenting the paper up like this, and I've got the valley creases. I'm going to put my pointer finger in the valley crease, and then I'm going to put my next finger here on this corner. My thumb is going to kind of go on the other corner here, and now I'm going to try to pull this together, my thumb and my middle finger, like so. If I can get it to line up, now I have this kind of crease here, and now I'm going to push this part inward as well and get it to also, and you can see the creases kind of do what you need them to if you're gentle and you're slow. Now I should have a triangle. I could even set it down on my paper, like on my table like this. It kind of looks like a pyramid, and I've got flaps here, and then I've got a flat edge here. I'm going to put it down on my table, and I'm going to crease this. This is what they call the water bomb base. Do not ask me why it's called that, but it's used in almost every piece of origami I've seen. So there we go. All right, now I've got this oriented towards me so that these loose flaps are kind of flying up, and the point that holds it all together is facing away from me. Just makes it a little easier for me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top layer of flaps, and I'm going to fold this one up to the top corner. So if I do it carefully, and it helps to put my finger at the midpoint of the bottom of my triangle, so that when I crease this upward, I get it as all the way to the top corner there as I can. And then I'm going to make this crease. So you can see now I have it folded like this. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other top flap. So I'm going to put my finger on that midpoint, and then I'm going to carefully fold this corner up to the top corner and then I will make my crease. Okay, so now I've got my crease, and now I have something that looks like this sitting on the table in front of me. What the heck, right? Yeah, this is what I've got. And we have it on the desk in front of us in this direction. So now what we're going to do is turn our paper over. I'm going to kind of rotate it on this point here. So I'm going to pick it up like this, and then I'm going to lay it down like this. So now on the table in front of me, I have what looks like just a triangle. And if I pick up this tip, there are 2 layers to it. I'm going to only pick up the top layer. And I want to very carefully pull it up so that it comes past the top line of my triangle. It doesn't matter how much it comes past. You get to decide. When I have it where I want it, I'm going to put my finger down to kind of hold it. And then it's created sort of almost like a bowl or a cup shape inside here. I don't want to go across all the way and flatten that crease, but I do want to go inside the cup and kind of push it flat. But I'm going to stay away from these edges where it's pulling up. Don't crease those down. Okay, so I've kind of creased along until I got to the edge of my cup. On the inside, you'll see there's kind of an inside crease. So only crease till you get to the edge of that. Do not press down on these parts. All right, now I'm going to pick up this wonky thing, and as I'm holding it, I can see that there is this part of the triangle that comes up past my baseline here. I'm going to crease that over and fold it over, and then very carefully I'm going to just press that down so it kind of holds itself like so. So I've got these 2 little flaps here that are just sort of hanging out. I've got my wings over here, and you can see this just looks like it kind of ended here. Now I'm going to turn this around so you guys can see what I'm doing. You can see that we've got this little baby triangle we folded over. We're going to use that. It should be aligned along our center line here. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold along that center line. And as you start to move the paper, it should almost automatically go along that line because we've creased it already. Now what I want to do is to pinch here and pinch this part so that it is a good firm crease. But I don't want to just flatten the whole thing. So I'm only pinching this little line until it hits where these little flaps come off, right? All right, now if I open this back up, I have completed my butterfly. Hey, congrats, CBK, you did it. See, it really wasn't that hard. And if you did get lost anywhere along the way, feel free to rewind and go back. Now, I should caution you that with origami, if your paper gets creased incorrectly, it is really a challenge to try and get it right. So just crumple it up and start with a new piece of paper if you need to. Yeah, lesson learned from many, many mistakes. I kept trying to fix it, and then the paper gets all wonky up and it doesn't fold the way you need it to. So if you get a crease in the wrong direction and you haven't gone too far, it's probably easiest to just start over again. All right, congrats. You just created an origami butterfly. Now, before I let you go, I want to introduce one more quick topic. Most of you have been talking with your teachers already about our school-wide learning outcomes. We call it GRADS. I'm sure you've seen GRADS somewhere in your classroom if you haven't talked to your teacher about it yet. But each letter in GRADS stands for one characteristic or trait that we're trying to develop in ourselves. It's a really cool rubric. Your teacher might show it to you when you're creating your ILP or your individualized learning plan. They may not, but this is a super helpful tool. So on this rubric, it gives us all the terms for GRADS here. Today we're talking about being growth-minded, so growth-mindedness. And I don't know how familiar you are with rubrics, but a rubric always gives you kind of a baseline, like, this is okay. This is a little bit better. This is the goal. This is where we're trying to get to, right? Okay, so in that column for 3, which is our goal, that's where we're trying to get, right? You can see we have growth-minded. And the very last one on here talks about exploring beyond the core curriculum. I would like to challenge you to demonstrate your growth-mindedness by exploring beyond the curriculum and looking to see if you can't hone your origami skills now that you've created your first piece, this butterfly. Click one of the links below. I'm going to learn how to do that. So, Lord willing, there are links below for you to click where there are some resources to other lessons that you can use to create some different origami projects. All right, CBK, thanks for joining us today, and I hope to see some of your projects soon.